I'm performing an autopsy on a cadaver that was supposedly shot, but there's only an exit wound. His body lay there on the metal table. I looked at the hole on his back, near the right kidney, with my fingers interlaced, thinking. A lot of people might rub their chin or lean on a counter, but I'd learned not to do that in med school. Just lace your fingers together, nitrile glove on nitrile glove. It avoids a lot of contamination issues. All of us at the coroner's office had been putting in some serious overtime since the hurricane had hit the coast. The news said it was the worst ever recorded. Rain still poured down, and the streets were half flooded, even if you weren't in the storm surge. Our facility was close to capacity, and we needed to get those bodies properly ID'd before sending them to a morgue. What I was dealing with here was something different. A day after the storm hit, this particular body was recovered from a street flooded with the surge. When we ran prints, he had an exceptional criminal record, and the finger width hole was assumed to be from a bullet. A plausible conclusion would be that he was looting. Things weren't adding up, though. What had been labeled an entry wound looked a lot more like an exit wound to me. It was larger, rougher, and didn't have any abrasion from the bullet entry. Details like that were unreliable on bodies that had been in the water for a while, but I saw no evidence of bacterial decomposition. It was also a bit strange that the man had clawed at the entry, but I supposed it was a reaction to the pain. There was a simple solution to this puzzle. If it was a gunshot wound with no exit, there would be a bullet. I turned him onto his back. Normally, someone would have helped me, but we were totally swamped. Rolling over a dead body weighing more than you do is hard work, but this wasn't my first rodeo. I started the Y incision to open up the chest and abdominal cavities. Really, you're doing that now. Flynn was about 14 hours into his shift. I couldn't blame him for wanting to get the easier bodies out of there and keeping the rest on ice so he could go home. I'm the doc, I call the shots. I'm working on this one, but I can do it alone. You just keep processing those others. Yeah. His voice was resigned, not resentful. Shoulders shrugged in his scrubs. I didn't need to see behind the surgical mask to know he was frowning. This was a tough week for all of us. Once I'd gotten the abdomen open, I started checking his left side. The first thing I noticed was that the kidney was missing. A lot of people only have one kidney. That wasn't what I was looking at. Both arteries and the ureter had been severed. Perhaps the bullet had passed through those, since there was notable tissue damage and internal bleeding. However, the condition of the connective tissues meant that he still had the kidney until very recently. And bullets don't make organs disappear. So what does make organs disappear? Perhaps it had moved around. Once it wasn't attached to anything. Stranger things had happened. The whole abdomen had to be examined anyway, so I just carried on, figuring I would find it at some point. I discovered a large hole in the liver. Removing the deep red organ carefully, I turned it over in my hands. There was only one hole. If a bullet was in him, it would be there. It felt heavy, the cold wet mass wanting to slip from my gloves. Normally, I would expect a liver this large to be fatty, but didn't look like it. Curious, I put it on the scale. 2 point for kg. That was big. I went to write the weight down and to take a break. Normally, an assistant would do it. I took off my gloves to write notes on everything so far. massaging my stiff neck for a moment. When I checked the clock, it was 10:45 p.m. I'm grabbing a coffee. You want one? Yes, please. Actually, if it's not too much trouble, can you grab me a water too? Good idea. Flynn was right. I'd forgotten to drink any water or eat or do anything but work the last 5 hours or so. I poured a couple of coffees and tucked the water bottles into my pockets. Making my way back down the fluorescent white hallway, I shouldered through heavy doors that pushed open from either side. They were convenient for moving bodies or when you were carrying multiple beverages. You doing all right? I asked. Doing just fine. Appreciate the drinks, Doc. He gave a nod. I downed the entire water bottle in one go, then drank about half of my coffee. I checked my phone for anything from my husband. Text me when you're heading home. Love you. He was probably asleep already. Sleep sounded pretty good, but I had a kidney to find. I put on my lab coat, gloves, mask, and glasses. Seeing the liver, I froze in confusion. In the sterile white light, it looked deflated. This had been a long shift, but I wasn't imagining things. My notes said to point for kg, but the scale now read 1.1 kg. Hurrying over, I stared at the green LED numbers as if they might change again. I was about to pick the liver back up when I noticed a wet, dark trail streaking from the metal plate of the scale onto the counter, then down to the tile floor. Flynn, can you come look at this? I tried to sound calm, but the rapidity with which Flynn came over suggested that I had not succeeded. What am I looking at? He asked. I weighed that liver at 2.4, wrote it down, got us coffees. And when I came back it weighed 1.1, and there's this trail going across the floor, so part of it fell. His conclusion was rational, but not correct. If it fell, why did it leave a trail that goes halfway across the room before fading out? Also, I feel compelled to mention that the body was in the water. Oh, his voice was low and concerned. This is bullet hole guy. Yep. We stood there looking at the gruesome trail. A smear which started dark and clear at the scale, but was untraceable about halfway across the room. We've got to find it, don't we? His eyes were visibly concerned, even behind the goggles. Of course he was right. But the question was not whether we had to find it, rather what it was. There was a growing certainty in my mind that it was not an inanimate object, but rather a living organism. I'm not a squeamish person. There's no need to go into details here, but I've seen a lot of things working as a coroner. There are a lot of insects associated with decomposing bodies, sure. None of those insects are 1.3 kilograms. My best guess is that it's an eel. Check the floor. Get everything it could crawl under away from the walls. Slither under, whatever eels do on land. It can't have gone far. We checked the small space under the cabinets, all around the room. I checked under the instrument table, everywhere I could think of. I jumped when I heard metal clatter to the floor. Flynn cursed. My first instinct was that the creature had knocked something down, but Flynn had just bumped a tray accidentally. I could tell his nerves were thin, as were mine. It's not here. He said, "Do you want me to check the next room?" I glanced at the doorway. The rubber sweeps on the base of the door looked secure. I doubted anything could have gotten through. Let's just slow down and think for a second. The whole search had been a panicked reaction. When we had started, my intuition had been that whatever had come out of the man's liver would be laying on the floor somewhere. Since it wasn't, we would need a new strategy, blacklight. I said, behind his mask. Flynn nodded in agreement, quickly going to a drawer and pulling out a blacklight shaped like a baton with 2 long bulbs encased in a plastic frame. He flipped it on, carefully walking toward the scale. The trail glowed a sinister yellow-green. Initially, the dark smears were obvious even to the naked eye, but where they had first seemed to disappear, now lay a faint, glowing trail. What are those little marks along both sides? Do eels have, like, flippers? I think some of them do. Perhaps my voice indicated it, but looking at this strange track, I was becoming less confident we were searching for an eel. When the trail meandered across the floor toward a gurney, a nauseous feeling started in my stomach. As it went up the wheel, then coiled around the stainless steel leg, acid began to enter my throat. A closed body bag lay at the end of the blacklight's trail. We're turning the body over. Flynn didn't want to, but he nodded. We turned the black bag over on the stainless steel gurney, and I found what I was looking for. A finger-sized hole through the plastic. Oh God. Flynn's hand went to cover his mouth in horror, but his reflexes stopped the rubber glove a few inches short. All right, take it to the freezer. Fast, let's go. With no hesitation, we pushed the gurney, the body bag, the body, and whatever was inside it through the swinging doors, then turned down the hall. With one hand on the gurney, I reached out for the long, horizontal handle on the stainless steel doors of the insulated freezer room. I was in denial when I felt something sharp on my glove. It had to be the zipper on the bag, I told myself. As my head whipped around, Flynn screamed. A breathy noise escaped my lips. The front of it had some kind of teeth or mandibles, evenly spaced and radiating from what must have been its mouth. Behind that, small sharp legs, perhaps an inch long, were going across the back of my glove. They must have been sharp, because they had easily cut through the nitrile and left small pinpricks of blood. The whole thing was jointed, armored, looked like bone. All of this I tell you from memory. Part of me wants to think that I misremembered the thing on the back of my hand, but I know what I saw. It burned into my retinas like a photograph, even though I violently flung my hand the moment I saw it. Pointed legs dug into my skin, and the length of the monstrosity was pulled out from the body bag and flung across the hall as I shook my arm as hard as I could in panic. It left a wet mark where it hit the wall, then flopped to the ground. Before I knew it, the thing had scurried toward the exit doors, legs scratching at the base of them, then found a tiny gap right in the middle. As it forced its way under, I noticed with horror it must have been about 3 feet long. I ran back the way we had come, grabbing a fire extinguisher from the wall. I couldn't tell you whether I would have sprayed it or bludgeoned it, but I needed to stop it. If nothing else, I needed to know what it was. I needed it desperately. Flynn stood frozen in the hall as I kicked the exit doors open. Stepping out into the parking lot in the downpour, searching puddles and currents of water under dim, yellow street lights. A deep puddle had formed around an overflowed storm drain a little ways out, and I saw the water rippling back and forth as if a fish was swimming in it. That was the last I ever saw of it. That storm drain led right back to the ocean, from whence it came. After perhaps 30 seconds in the rain, I came back in, completely soaked and trailing water on the tile. Flynn just stared at me. "Sorry," he said. For some reason, I laughed. "Nothing to apologize for. You did everything right." What was that? I have no idea. So it is just something that came up out of the ocean and eats dead bodies. Taking the glove off to look at the wounds on my hand, I shook my head. Gunshot wound was supposed to be cause of death, remember? His eyes went wide behind the goggles, and I couldn't help but remember the marks on the body where the man had clawed at his back. I wondered what would have happened to me if that thing had gotten to a softer part of me rather than reaching my hand first. It took me a long time to accept that I would never know what it was. I talked to a couple of very good marine biologists over the next few weeks who had never heard of anything like it. One of them took a bunch of samples from the first body and found some DNA. The best she could tell me was that it was from some organism distantly related to a polychaete worm, although no similar DNA had been documented. One of her only insights was that the creature most likely washed up because of the storm, which was the worst we've ever had. That was little comfort to me, because these once-in-a-lifetime storms are only getting more common. I asked her how I could find out what it was, what the next steps were. Her answer stuck with me. "We don't know half of what lives in the ocean, not even close. If it's something we've never seen before, I can't tell you how to find it. We'll probably never know what it was." "I'm sorry,"